about data lineage today, and in particular, metadata management. As somebody who has been actively involved in data lineage for a long time, I could tell you that this topic is so near and dear to my heart. We've been fortunate enough, we've won basically every award you can in this area. So let me just kind of this is my background slide. I won't spend time on it other than if anybody has questions, please feel free to shoot me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn, be happy to help out however I can. All right, what are we going to talk about? Can you believe this? For folks who come to our webinars often, I only have 10 minutes to speak. That's impossible, but I'm going to put in a lot of information. So I just want to quickly go over some fundamentals of metadata management. I want to look at the current IT landscape that we're all dealing with, and then look at some fundamentals of data lineage. After that, the real fun will begin, because then Amnon and I will just kind of do a one-on-one where I'm going to ask some questions and we're going to talk for a little bit, and he's going to try to show the answers to these questions live within their tool suite. So talk about guts. That's guts. So let us continue with this. So let's first get into some basic concepts of metadata management. I know not everybody here is highly aware of it. When we look at providing value in our business, we need to combine data. Data is the actual values within our databases, within our files. Metadata is all the knowledge around it. So I like to think about data as context or content and metadata as content. You really need to have both in order to provide true information, actionable information to your business, because data indicates the facts. What are the different types of customers that we have? But metadata gives the story, meaning, hey, customer type 1 is affluent, customer type 2 is upper middle class, and the definitions behind those concepts. We need to combine data and metadata, content and context, to really provide value in our businesses. Because when we look at metadata management provides the who, what, when, where, how, and why of our data. And without good metadata, scratch the word good, without great metadata management, you can't have a successful security and compliance program. You just wouldn't be able to do that. Without good great metadata management, you wouldn't be able to have proper and successful machine learning. Without great metadata management, you can't even begin to do data governance. So it's a seminal and critical topic. So let me continue. We are here to talk specifically about the data lineage portion of metadata management. So in order to understand why data lineage is successful, let's look at the current IT landscape, what we deal with. And I would like to suggest for any of us who work in the IT field, this is our reality. So this is taken from one of our client partners, a Fortune 14 company, just massive. And what they did was they tracked just a single process known as customer throughout their environment. And as you see, customer is absolutely everywhere within their environment. Could you imagine trying to manage an IT environment like this? It would be so difficult. And some of you, I know what you're saying. You're thinking, well, hold it a minute. You're looking at a process map for a global 14 company, and you're looking at customer. Of course, that looks correct. But maybe if we really looked at systems and we defined our scope a little better, maybe it wouldn't look so bad. Well, let's look at just IT system flows. I would suggest that they look exactly like this. That when we look at the flow of data in our companies, it looks something like this. And when you look at this chart, you may be thinking, gosh, what a mess. David probably made up this chart. He just drew it for fun to bring out a point. No, this chart is taken from a mid-sized client partner of ours. They're a mid-sized insurance company. They're not that large. And all we're looking at is decision support systems. And when you look at this kind of IT architecture, which is common, this is what we see across our industry. It has a host of problems. Number one, there is extreme amounts of data redundancy. As you can see, there's process redundancy, technology redundancy. And guess what? This kind of environment is extremely expensive to manage. That's why we need to have data lineage. Data lineage tracks how automatically how we move data across our IT ecosystem. And without electronic data lineage, guess what? You need to have some really smart people pulling copybooks out of Pan Valet, running grep commands, trying to sort through this. It's just a nightmare. And that's where technical impact analyses come in. Data lineage is what a technical impact analysis shows. And I have a definition here. All a technical impact analysis is a metadata-driven report that helps you, that assists the IT department in assessing the impact of a proposed change on our IT systems. So let me give you a few examples of this. And then we're going to bring Amnon here because we're going to show this live. So classic example here. Let's suppose we needed to change the definition or the format to a business term. And our business term is expense totals. Below is a very simplified impact analysis that would show, hey, expense total comes from a Java server page, and it then moves into these other systems downstream and eventually into a Hive database. This is a very simplistic example of data lineage in an impact analysis. What do these really look like? This seems much more complex, but I can assure you this is still pretty simplistic at any large company. This impact analysis is showing the entity account. And it's just showing that, as you see to the left of your screen, as that field, as that value comes into our IT environment, it starts moving through our systems. And you can see it is being replicated all throughout our environment. And this comes with challenges. If there is a problem with entity account, we need to be able to figure out where does this exist throughout our ecosystem, and it becomes quite the challenge. So in the examples, I'm just trying to give you guys some basics of data lineage, some basics of impact analysis. The examples I've shown you up to this point are forward lineage, and that's what we typically do. It is most common for companies to do forward lineage, where we're examining a field and seeing how it moves downstream. However, we also have something called backward lineage. And this is where we're looking at a downstream field, like distance miles, and seeing where it came from upstream. So lineage can work both forward and backward, and everything in between. With that, I have given the basics of data lineage and the basics of impact analysis. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in Amnon here, and we're going to start showing some more practical and real life examples of this. It's one thing to show screenshots. Anybody can get the PowerPoint to work. But to actually do this live with software, that's a different challenge. So first, Amnon, You have more guts than just about any other person I know in data lineage to come in on to do this live. You get an award just for that.
Thank you.
Well, and Amnon, I know you've been in the field a long time, like myself, and you've been grappling with this issue of data lineage. We can show this, again, I can show this easily on a PowerPoint and it looks so simple, but pulling metadata from all the different technologies that exist in a company, that's not easy. Can you maybe show an example of how you're able to extract metadata? I stopped screen sharing, you could take the screen.
Right.
How
So,
you pull metadata from all these sources and somehow integrate it. That's a trick that Harry Houdini can't do. So I'm gonna let you start it out.
yeah, so now I have to deliver of the promise, but thank you for providing a little bit of the fundamental. Yeah, we at Octopai are coming from many years in leading business intelligence groups in large organizations like insurance and banking. And one of the themes that we had to do is to understand where data is coming from and where is it going. It used to be follow the data pipes or data flow, but the most popular term is data lineage. And for data lineage also, there are a couple of areas, just like you said, reverse lineage or forward and backward, but also through time, we've seen that there are several layers to lineage. And I would like to show some of the things that we do, but with relations to how many of our customers actually leverage lineage for their benefit, either using Octopai or doing it manually, but the power of automation around lineage with using properly the material that is called metadata is really important. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just let me know that you can see some kind of a nice octopus trying to think what to do. But
he looks like he's working hard.
right. But what I wanted to share is that this is kind of a small picture of some of our clients. Aside of us being very proud of having them use Octopai, you can see something really clear: cross-platform. You can see cross industries. You can see insurance and banking and healthcare and pharma and universities and electronics and telecom. And one thing they have in common is that if you look about their data landscape, it looks something like this. You can see a lot of ETL processes that are being generated in different ETL tools that are actually extracting data from the data sources. They then store it in data warehouse, and then they show this in reports. And this trust, this contract of enabling the business users by the business intelligence to trust the data that they see involves a tedious work of organization to understand where the data is coming and where is it going to. Let me show you an example. So what you see here in this demo is exactly what you see here: ETL tools, data warehouse tools, analysis services, and reporting tools. But in this case, this is the real stuff using real metadata. So in this case, you have 400 ETL processes from different sources. There are shipping data and extract the data and store it in about 2,500 database tables and views. And the data is here. And there are 24 reports being generated to maybe dozens and hundreds of users that consume pieces of that data. Now, let's take one popular use case. Let's say that Anne-Marie is a business user, and I'm going to take you as an example, that is really interested in looking at a report called customer products, and they want to see which products have been bought by their clients. And for some reason, she suspects that some data doesn't make sense. Maybe some data is missing or data is mismatched. So the language of the business would be, could you check if the data can be trusted? In the data architect or business intelligence language, it means where this report is being generated. How does it look like? Where does it consume the data from the data warehouse? And which tables of views are relevant that are storing the data that is then being landed on that report? And by the way, which ETL processes are actually running explicitly that extract that data to that data warehouse that then lands on the report? What you talked about backwards lineage, or what we call reverse lineage. So in this case, the only thing you need to do is to go to this section of reports and ask Octopai, could you find the report that Anne-Marie refers to? I'm going to check here and look for a report called customer products. And as I'm typing in, what Octopai does, it browses the entire landscape of the BI and finds that explicit report. So first of all, we can see that this is a report generated in SSRS. And the only thing I need to do is click Lineage. And why? Because once I found the report, I would like to understand which are the relevant database tables of views and ETLs from all of this blend of information is relevant to landing the data in that report. I'm going to click Lineage, and that's it. What you see here is an exact analysis that says this report called customer products is actually based on this view that is based on these tables and this view, and you can see the legend here, and also by running these ETL processes. So what is it that you see here? You see ETL, data warehouse, and reporting and code in one screen. You can also see that there are different vendors of BI that are participating collectively in landing the data in that specific report. What you see here that is something that we've checked with other clients about this type of a complexity can take anything from few good hours to maybe 1 or 2 days. And that has been
if I could jump in, because you're showing something that's very real world on your previous image on the screen. I really enjoyed it because you showed ETL tools of Informatica, Data Stage, and SSIS. That is what we typically, as a consultant, I can tell you, that's what I see all the time. You show 5 and 6 different front end tools. That's the reality. A lot of times, you know, it is almost, it's a unicorn to walk into a company and find one ETL tool, 1 or 2 front end tools. It just doesn't exist. And the type of analysis you showed is huge in advanced analytics, because people want to understand when they get a report like Anne-Marie, she gets this report. Her first question, if she doesn't have experience with it, what data is in this report and where did it come from?
Right. And I will give the credit to our clients, because we've been working the past few years with very, very closely with our clients that have used Octopai to generate millions of kind of lineages. And one of the things they guided us is, how can you see the data journey in an easier manner? So here's another use case just to continue with that. Let's say that you're looking at these ETL processes and another question rises up. Is that the target ETL or that's a source ETL? In other words, is that ETL actually extracts data from the data sources, or it relies on information that happens prior to that? So here's how easily you can navigate. If you click on this, you can see a radio button that has really cool stuff in here, but one button here says immediately, hey, Octopai found additional things that are happening prior to that ETL, that ETL actually becomes maybe a target too. Let's click on that. And then you see a different picture. This ETL, which is a source ETL to that report, actually is a target ETL to everything that happens in these tables. So now the question is, well, if the ETL consumes data from these database tables, you can see the names. How do you drop the data in these tables? So let's go further in that journey. Oh, there's another 2 ETL processes that are becoming the source to that table, which is a source to that target, which is a source to this one. And you can go as back as needed, depends on your type of navigation. In other words, traveling within this cosmos of relationship that could be billions of different permutations and data pipe junction is an endless, almost impossible way. And leveraging technologies enable you to navigate in those dark areas of what's going on in deep in the BI.
Amnon, and I can share with you a case study on this. We had a client partner, huge bank, one of the largest in the world, and they had this type of data lineage capabilities, which, you know, this was made to look easy. I can assure you, when you're building this, which we'll get to try, you had mentioned people can build this on their own. When I started in the field, you had to build this on your own. And that is a lot of work. I mean, you need really smart people to do that. But just let me share the case study. This bank had to change a key field on a credit card, and they had to expand it. They were working with, I'm debating, because the company they were working with is not a client partner of ours, but it's going to be a little embarrassing for them, so I won't name them, but it's a major credit card company. Probably almost all of us, if not all of us on this call, own this credit card, and it's sitting in our wallet right now. That credit card company, just to expand one field, just to do the data lineage, that's it. It took 4 people 6 months to just do this type of analysis. The client partner we work with, they were world-class in this area, the kind of capabilities you're showing, they had that, and they were able to do that in under 30 minutes. And
Wow.
that's the power of impact analysis of data lineage.
Right, and I think that you nailed you kind of hit the nail on the head. You mentioned earlier, yeah, you can do it yourself, but kind of 5-6 years ago, my partners and myself, when we were in that position, we were so frustrated with the fact that we could never win. You wake up one day and you get requests from the business, and you always behind things, and this is what actually led to the born of Octopai. We said enough is enough. How come, or are there technologies that we can actually leverage in order to help us as BI leaders and data leaders to help our organization? And this is the output of that.
Well, and you mentioned, Amnon, you mentioned how, hey, you always feel like you're behind. Let me give some detail on that. You showed on that previous image where you showed all the technologies. Those are not static things.
Mm-hmm.
You know this, very well. The technologies you're showing, the Informaticas, the IBMs, the Cognoses, they don't just create one version of their tool and it doesn't change for the next 10 years. These things change a lot, and they can completely wreck your metadata integration layer.
Right.
So it's a challenge to keep up with this.
Right, and one of the fundamental things that we wanted to have in our offering as a theme is that you will have a product rather than invest in professional services tailor-made. You will have a product that you can always throw in additional data sources. So in that case, for example, if you have SSIS and Informatica, and maybe tomorrow you want to add Snowflake or ADF or what have you, Octopai can consume that and still flatten everything to see everything in one screen. Think of Octopai as a layer that analyzes your entire BI landscape. If I may continue with that, it reminds me another use case, and I'm not going to pick up on N this time, but one of the use cases that we...
if you want to, I don't mind.
I see that you're comfortable, so I'm going to pick up on you as well. Let's say that you called your analyst or your BI expert and say, for some reason, I want to enrich my customer products report. In other words, as the organization evolves, there are more data that is being created in the data sources. Let's say we've launched a new campaign, we've launched a new product line, we opened a new subsidiary. More data is being created in the CRM and the FI and the marketing and so on. And now you want to bring that new data to that report. So one thing we already covered is where data is coming from. We know it's coming from here. By the way, if this is something you don't want to take anymore, you can always eliminate that. But let's say that you know that these ETLs needed to be updated in order to ship more data into your report. And you pick up this one. So now let's do this the other way around, which means if I were to choose a design that needs to change this ETL, I would want to know prior to doing anything if this is the only report that is going to be impacted by this. In other words, impact analysis.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about the relationship between the different systems. We haven't even drilled into to the object level of the data asset, which you showed in your screen. So, immediate question. How many things are directly or indirectly related to that ETL process? So if you have your traditional way, here's the Octopai way. You click on that and do the lineage forward. Click on that, and within 2-3 seconds, you get another picture. This is a live analysis. This is not a predefined picture. All the calculations and the visualization and the lineage are being produced on the fly. So what you see here says the following. If you were to change anything here with your data architect or your data management, and you need to design a change in which you need to document the possible impact, all of these red buttons here are all the tables that are going to be impacted by this, as well as the tabular schemas, which for the first time you can see them on the screen. And all of these reports are going to be impacted, and you should know about this. And you don't want to find yourself dealing with use case number 1 of Anne-Marie saying, thank you for enriching my report, but why the other report is not working. And in this case, here's the report of Anne-Marie. If you remember, this was an SSRS report, but I am leading sales. I'm using sales report, and this one is in business object. So now 2 different reports for 2 different users in probably 2 different departments have some kind of a common denominator of an impact due to this ETL. And if you don't know this picture prior, you might find yourself spending so much time to understand possible impacts that you will find them after you launch your changes in production. And best practices today of every change that are being made in ETL processes are by printing or validating the lineage with Octopai so you can cover everything that possibly could be impacted.
Well, and this is such a strong, and it's the classic use case for data lineage, because different studies will show different amounts, but when you look at what programmers and analysts spend the majority of their time on, it's manual data lineage. It is about 55 to 60% of the people portion of managing an ecosystem like this. And your example is a good one. We change one ETL process. What could that hurt? Well, what you're showing here can hurt a whole lot of things. Look at all the reports, all the tables that eventually come from there. And that's been one of my pitches when people say, gosh, why should we invest in really great metadata management? Because this is 50 to 60% of the people portion of your IT budget. That's
right. Here's another interesting use case that we've seen some of our clients leverage this. In few cases, sometimes ETL processes fail.
Yep, sure they do.
You get an alert that this ETL process failed. First question that comes to your mind, which reports are impacted as we speak? Either not showing data, reports are empty, data may be wrong. Who are the users that are suffering? Either they know about this or they don't know about this due to this ETL process fail. So what clients are doing, as you can generate this lineage, they hooked up Octopai to their support system. So every time that there's an ETL failure, they do an automatic diagnostic of possible sequences. They generate the lineage with Octopai. They know the name of the reports, just like you see here. They already have records of the users that are using this, and they send an alert saying something is wrong with your report. Hold on until we tell you otherwise. And this is dramatic.
Sure. Well, because if companies don't have that capability, that all has to be done manually. And that's a very difficult road. And as you said, our IT environments, they're not static. People are, you could have a data analyst in a line of the business who just an hour ago added another process pulling from, in this example, the load DWH table and built a brand new report. And unless you had some automated way of bringing this in, you wouldn't even know that they were doing that.
Right. That's a really cool story, because it reminds me another interesting couple of use cases that one of our clients a few months ago ran a complete analysis of their BI, and they found out that there's about 10 to 12% of their ETLs taken from thousands of ETLs that are not consumed by any report, which means that if you were to delete those ETLs, no report is going to be damaged by this. So this is what they call the cleansing project. And just imagine taking off 10% of your ETLs that either have not been used or they run every day, but no report actually consumes that data. How offload does it take from your TCO?
So, and I love that example. May I 5-up you on this? May I?
Sure.
So same exact scenario, Fortune 300 client partner of ours. So big company, same exact example. We ran an analysis on their ETL processes, and they have thousands and thousands and thousands. We found 61% were dormant. So we literally, I mean, that is like, and they were not a federal client partner. We see that many times in the federal sector, but 61%, we were able to turn off 61% of those ETL jobs, and nobody complained. So so your example to me is a conservative one, if anything. If you are a large company and you have extensive ETL, you're going to have these type of numbers, whether it's 10%, 20, 30, 40, if you're like our client partner was, they were at 61. I mean, whatever the percentage is, you're going to have this. I want to hit, you've really been focusing on BI, and I want to ask you something that I deal with a lot. Our client partners complain all the time that, hey, our business people look at the reports and they know the numbers are wrong. How would you utilize data lineage to try to really get to a root cause analysis? What's happening in our reports? Because I was thinking about that when you were talking about what we're seeing on the reports.
So there are a couple of ways to deal with that and leverage data lineage. One of the things is to run an analysis to understand the report structure. Let me give you an example. Let's piggyback on this sales report. Let's say that I'm not going to pick up Marie for the third time, so I'm going to take somebody else. But let's say that I'm looking at this report and something is wrong with my data, and I was expecting to see certain data set. For example, this is a report that represents my my client's name, my users. So one of the things I want to do is not only to see the relationship of the business object that generates that report to what happens prior between system to system. I want to drill in. So this is where we go from the upper lineage to the deep lineage. And just clicking on that, there's lineage in the level of the map itself. So this lineage from the report backwards is showing me that this report is actually based on these tables and these ETLs. But there's also lineage inside. And what I'm clicking right now is to go into that green button. Says, hey, Amnon, you will not see any additional information aside of that calculated column that is based on these two physical data elements. So if I were to expect anything more than what I see, is actually a false expectation. Now, let me lead you to something interesting that that also can be learned from that. This is metadata, and you talked about metadata management. When we started the company, we thought about, let's leverage metadata just to see how the relationship between the different data assets, and we can draw a map. But throughout time, we've learned with our clients that they are probably smarter than us. And they told us 2 years ago and last year as well, if you have the metadata, why don't you pull more insights of that metadata? In other words, can you tell us what was the organization intention when they said, let's create a full name column? Is that really just first name and last name? And when we pulled out that information from the reporting system, this is what we found out. We were looking to understand what did the organization meant when they said full name. And we found that that report. When digging into the glossary of the report, we found out that it was intentionally meant to show the first name, middle name, and last name versus what we actually show the first name and last name. So this is dramatic because it's either a way to find a data asset that exists in the reporting but had not been built into the report versus it was not there in the first place. And we have to go to the ETL guys, say, design a change in your ETL because Anne-Marie, use case number 2, wants to enrich her report. This is the difference between 5 minutes observation to a 1-month project, just with a click of a button.
And companies complain about that. You get a chief marketing officer who says, I just want a couple simple changes. Why do I have to wait weeks and weeks for something that seems simple? And in your example, I think is a great illustrative one, but I want to make sure that everyone's listening here. He picked one of the simplest fields. What if you were picking things like customer profitability or margin, things which have calculations? Now, boy, does that get tricky, right?
Yes, and you brought a good point because like full name, which is a calculated column, if you go to the data warehouse, you will not find a column called or a table called full name.
Yep.
You will find 2 physical data assets. But if you talk about commission, calculation, and all these kind of things that are combining maybe 5, 10, maybe 15 data assets calculated and generated in the reporting system, if you don't have that, you may get lost. By the way, when we talked about the kind of the deep lineage, you can do that also in the ETL side. Just to give you an example, if you go back here, what if I want to change the load data warehouse ETL? So I'm going to look for load data warehouse, and that's maybe the one that I've decided to change. Instead of seeing the lineage, meaning tables and views, I want to drill into the map. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if you look at the load data warehouse as an example, and this very validates to everything, you can see kind of lines coming in, coming out of that ETL, which means there are some relationship between this ETL to these 4 database tables. From my experience, it may lead to different maps in that load data warehouse ETL. And you can see here the plus, or this one. Let me show you what exists in this arrow. I'm going to click on that, and this is how you drill very, very easy. I found a map, actually 2 of them, and I want to see lineage in the column level, not between systems only. I want to drill in. And in this innocent line, this is what you see.
Wow.
This is a lineage where you can track a certain field from its source to the target and what happens in between, all the transformations, all the expressions, all the calculations, all the modification. Everything is discovered with a click of a button. And this is one map out of the 4 in that ETL, which is one of the 3 to Anne-Marie's report. Now, the question is, do you want to navigate leveraging the technology or you want to keep doing it yourself? And going back here, all of our clients and many more beyond this list have recognized 3 things. Yeah, the need to understand the data movement process, where data is coming from or where is it going. In other words, data lineage is a very, very important topic. Second, they don't want to keep doing this manually because they are always behind. They're doing unnecessary mistakes. And the time to market between their delivery to the business request is getting longer and longer and bigger, and they want to shorten this. And 3, it's more cost effective leveraging technologies versus doing DIY, do it yourself. So why not?
And in my experience, I really think having technology in that automates this manual impact analysis, manual data lineage, it costs 90 in my professional experience, and I've done this now for over 2 decades. It is more than a 90% cost increase as compared to having automated capabilities. To me, any Global 2000 company needs to have automated data lineage. But Amnon, I have a question for you. We have to get to this one before I let Anne-Marie open it up for the questions from our audience. I want to talk about, I had this conversation with a client partner earlier this year. They're a smaller, but not small, but they are a smaller financial services company. And it was so interesting. We were doing an assessment for them on data management. And half the people in the company said, we are crazy for not having any cloud-enabled applications. The other half of the company said, we are insane for even considering such a thing. And in the world of data lineage and metadata management, we are seeing significant movements to the cloud. I'm going to start with the hard question first. I'm going to ask you, why should a company look to move and utilize the cloud for this? And my second question is this safe, especially with PII and CCPA 2020, GDPR? These are big regulations. Right. So why should we be doing that? And is it safe? The floor is yours.
So thank you for bringing this question, because I get quite a lot these type of questions when organizations look at the richness of the capabilities and say, okay, assuming that I want that, what do I have to go through in order to have that? When we established Octopai 5 years ago, we didn't want to be just another software vendor. We wanted to challenge the status quo. We believed 5 years ago that the market wants to see something different. We didn't want to be more of the same rather than completely disruptive. And when we looked at how the market works and how we work, we looked at 3 things and we said, let's do exactly the opposite. Back then also there was a very popular Seinfeld episode about the opposite. So we felt becoming the opposite. And the status quo was a lot of manual work, a lot of professional services, a lot of custom made, a lot of on-prem. There were rarely products. And then we said, what is it that we can introduce to the market that could be completely different? So we thought about 3 things. 1, let's have a product. 2, let's run this in the cloud as a service, meaning 0 capital or IT capital from the organization to enjoy this functionality. And 3, let's become a cross-platform, meaning analyzing your entire landscape. Given all these 3 themes, we have adopted few technologies in our platform, like machine learning and algorithms and progress analysis and decision tree techniques and automation, that from the customer's perspective, they need to invest 30 minutes to extract the metadata, either manually or running our extractors. And once they extract the metadata, it's being encrypted and also in transit moves to their instance in Octopai that runs on the Azure Data Factory or a secured zone per region. And the reason that I'm showing you this list of clients again is that you can see banking and insurance that have crossed the chasm of understanding the power of the cloud. And by the way, we're not going to take a credit for that. Big companies are shifting to the cloud due to Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, Oracle. Data in the cloud is not a nasty word. We deal with metadata in the cloud, and organizations understand that this is where the market is going. Some of them have been fortunate enough to already be there. So we see a lot of movement in transition to the cloud. And there's also new era of business intelligence system like Snowflake and ADF and Hadoop and Cloudera, which is part of it, Talent in the cloud. All of these new era or new aged business intelligence tools are born in the cloud. We are a native cloud. So yeah, we don't expect 250,000 organizations to do that today, but it's in transition. And every year we see 2x, 3x, 5x organizations, anything from not being afraid to move to the cloud, seriously considering the cloud, proactively do actions moving to the cloud. How secure it is? Well, just talk to us. We can show you a lot of things that has to do with security. We deal with metadata, not data. So PII has nothing to do with us. Yep. Nevertheless, we have very good conversation with the security and audits with organizations, anything from a questionnaire to a decent conversation. And we never lost a deal due to a non-recommendation of the security team over the organization. We never lost a deal.
Well, and it is, as you said, it is significant. Moving to the cloud does give some real advantages. We've even done some cloud items internally at EWSolutions. You know, we're not a global 2000 company, but when one of the things people want to do, and I'm trying to, my cell phone is not that close to me right now, unfortunately, but a lot of times as a business, you want to push reporting capabilities, even these kind of analyses to iPads, to cell phones. When you're in the cloud, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. So I would love to spend an hour just talking about this topic, but Anne-Marie is sitting there with questions from the audience. I've burnt up most of the time. So Anne-Marie, fire away with questions you have.
Well, David and Amnon, that was fascinating. And there are some questions. I'm going to ask the ones that we have time for. And anything extra, any questions you have we don't address, please don't hesitate to contact and let me share my screen for the right people to contact. Hang on.
Yes, please don't hesitate. If you have questions, we're going to give you some email addresses. Please reach out to those people.
Okay. Question number 1 is, how does taxonomy affect the use of data lineage? Is taxonomy an important thing to have in doing this?
Amnon, you're our guest today. I'm going to let you go first, unless you want me to take the taxonomy.
Yeah, so we've learned, taxonomy is really, really a good value added to that. Nevertheless, we see organizations that are not either prepared or have good practice in that, but it doesn't interfere the ability to leverage lineage, at least for the use cases that several of them we've discussed today.
And taxonomy is critical, especially in the metadata management function. To have a good taxonomy of your products, of your customers. One of the things that Amnon showed, again, I loved his example because it was so real world, where we have all these ETL tools, all these front end tools. And really, it gets even more complex than that, where there's just so many processes we have. Good taxonomies help us streamline the business and make those end results so much cleaner. So it is seminal that you work on that. And that is something a company really has to define.
Another question. Thank you very much, both of you. I'm moving along. Does Octopai manage unstructured data?
Absolutely. I think that if we go back a little bit of history, that was the initial things that we wanted to focus on. Like 4 years ago, we thought about let's have the metadata management around recreation of metadata to the unstructured environment, even further to the IoT, where in some cases you don't have metadata. But then when we met the market, and there's nothing stronger when you meet the market was fascinated with what we were planning and doing, but they told us something really, really smart that I remember from even today. There are urgent things and there are important things. Please take care of our urgent things. We don't even know how many reports we have today.
Yep.
We don't know where the data is coming from. Can you take care of those pieces of landscape that we currently use? So this is behind us. And this year and following on, we're going to add also the unstructured from what we've started. This is a ongoing journey. And for the first time ever, you will have structured data, unstructured data from different sources of different vendors, on-prem and cloud, in one solution.
I'm going to be interested to see how you tackle that, because unstructured data, especially in metadata management, is such a challenge, right? And
Correct.
it's our job to try to actually take the unstructured and make it as structured as we can to get some good metadata on it. Where is it coming from? What do we think its meanings are? And move it over. I will be very interested to see how you tackle that one. Anne-Marie, do you have another question for us?
I do have a question, but I don't know whether we have time for it. I'm going to ask it, and then if we don't have enough time, get more information later. What's the product architecture in Octopai? Is it a graph database based back end? What's the UI, etc.?
So in short, we have a couple of layers in the product. First of all, we have the metadata extractors. It's not a must, but this is a way to make it easier for the client to extract metadata. From what we've experienced with the hundreds of organizations that we work with, none of them wanted to pull metadata themselves.
You're right.
So the first layer is extracting metadata. Then it goes to the layer of the analysis phase, where we do the modeling and the indexing and all the preparation of the metadata. You need to remember that that metadata is semantically different in different syntaxes of the different tools. The ETL of Oracle store procedures is different in its semantics with SSIS, not to blend 20 different systems. So on top of this, we have our semantic layer, which is what we call the Octopai language. This is where we kind of flatten all the metadata and rebuild the relationship. And this is where the IP, this is where the real stuff of technology happens, all the algorithms, machine learning, decision tree, progress analysis. On top of this, we have what we call the visualization engine. And then on top of this, we have the UI. So we're using graph databases. We're using, in certain cases, OrientDB, which is very popular for UI, and so on and so forth. And we also have a combined search engine that, as I said, when you click Octopai to create a lineage, this is not a predefined picture. This is created on the fly.
Yep.
So imagine like thousands of regex requests that are going to your tens of billions of different lineage possibilities. Find that, understand, create, connect, and visualize, and in 3 seconds. And this is the combined stack of architecture enables all of this to happen.
Oh, that was wonderful. We have 3 minutes left.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, I'd say probably wrap us up, take us home. But Amnon, we're going to probably have to get you back here to talk a little bit more, because this was fun to kind of give some of the concepts and theory, and then to show it live. I think I'm really hoping our members enjoy this, because this is what we deal with in the real world. This is real world stuff.
And that's what I wanted to point out. This is the first webinar we will be doing, we are doing with Octopai. There will be future webinars. So if you have questions that weren't answered today, you can either ask them separately by sending questions about Octopai to Jody or Michal. If you have questions about metadata management or EWSolutions, please contact David. Their email addresses are on the screen. We will be having additional webinars with Octopai. We hope to see you again for them, where we'll dive deeper into architecture, metadata management in different instances, etc. For now, I'd like to thank David and Amnon for a really informative and entertaining webinar. Wishing everyone happy holidays, and see you after the new year.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.